After setting this system up in a prior video, I'm coming back the next day to check on how it heated up the pole barn. It basically had ran all day long, and then I had shut it off about 8 hours prior to filming this video. I turned the system off last night, and still nice and warm in here. Still, it's 51 degrees, and it's probably in the 30s outside. I've got this leak, which I can fix. I've got this one seems to be slightly, just barely leaking. I can easily tighten that one too. You can see that's a drip from it. And then I've got this, there seems to be a leak on the back side of this joint. So if I, no, it might be this actual joint. Yeah. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that. You can see it's not a lot, but it's enough to, maybe be a problem, especially dripping on this stuff. I'm gonna have to like keep a towel here. And this one seems to be leaking more, and this towel seems to be able to catch most of it. I mean, it's slowly getting wet. And because this has glycol in it, it's not like it'll just all evaporate either. It's got oil in it. Like, it's almost like an oil. I don't know how to... I'm thinking I'm just going to ignore this and deal with it if it ever becomes a problem. More than this. I mean, I don't even know how I'd go about getting rid of that. I didn't realize it at first, but a closely spaced tee is really only needed when you're using an Instahot that's burning a fuel, rather than, in my case, I'm using an electric version. So I don't really need the function of a closely spaced tee in my setup. So luckily I can just get rid of this leak without causing any issues. And in fact, it'll make my system better and more efficient without it. I mean, the way they built this too is pretty janky. It just rests on there. I had mentioned in a previous video about some of the issues with these panels, about how some of the pipes were not reamed, and now you see some of the leaks, and then also how this expansion tank isn't properly supported and it's just resting on the piping. I definitely would not recommend buying pre-made panels, at least off of Amazon. It's unfortunate because the panel is, says it's made in America, and it even has the name of the guy who made the panel on there, and it's numbered. So it's strange that they didn't take more pride in their workmanship, didn't ream the pipes. So buyer beware, I guess. For the price, I would expect better quality. So I would highly recommend you just trying to build it yourself. But you just copy a basic system, don't change the order of the components, and you can just buy all the components separately, and you'll probably be able to make these panels for about half the price. And you'll end up doing a better job, I'm sure. At least better than the ones I got. I got 2 different panels, and both of them have had issues. So the other thing I need to check is I need to check the pressure on this tank. So my system pressure is sitting here, at about 16 and a half. That's with the temperature pretty cold, around, like 50 degrees. And in the slab, I imagine it's still maybe a little over 50. I don't know, we'll see when I kick this on. But when it expands from this cold temperature all the way up, because last night when I turned it off, it had been running, I turned it on in the morning and it ran all day pretty much. By the end of the day, I've been watching the pressure creep up, because when this turns on, the pumps create more pressure in the system, and this will go to like in the 20s, and this goes up to like 20. Something like that. And then as the temperature increases, it just continually builds pressure. And the tank is supposed to be absorbing most of that pressure, but maybe the tank is undersized for the system, but I don't know. It's kind of strange. But I need to check the pressure to make sure that it's correct. Because when the heat was all the way up, it was all, like, this pressure was up to like 27 probably. Which the blow off is at 30. So, you know, if I had let it run any longer, which we'll probably never let it run like that in the future. But in case it ever just did, it could have hit the blow-off valve if it had gone for another hour or two or more and expanded that fluid just a little bit more. Okay, I'm rambling. I'm going to go ahead and kick this on for a couple hours and then I'll turn it back off. But mainly today I'm going to go down and start on the house's heating system. And I'll get back to putting the controls into this one after I get further along on the houses. A couple other things I noticed yesterday. This loop was running at about 2 degrees, 1 to 2 degrees lower than this loop. But otherwise they were the same. So this was like feeding at like 91 or 2, and this was at 90. And this was like returning at like 78 or 9, and this was at like 77. So right now, I just turned it on. The floor in the shop is returning at about 55. And the floor for the rest of the area says it's returning at about 57. And then overall up here, it says it's 53 by the time it gets up here. Or, you know, all these have a little bit of air to them, so basically that's pretty cold, 53, and it's getting it up into the low 90s, apparently. So it's going from the mid 50s to the low 90s. It's doing almost a 40-degree temperature increase. So I'm just gonna let this run for a couple hours and see how it's doing. And one final thing I wanted to squeeze in here was I haven't really mentioned how I picked the size of my Instahot. Originally, when I built the pole barn, I didn't plan on heating it, so I just provided it with a 100 amp sump panel that would basically feed the shop and provide some circuits, and I thought it should have been more than enough power for the pole barn. However, after getting into designing and building the heating systems around the property, I ended up building systems that incorporated electric Instahots to heat the hydronic floor heating. We eventually get heat pumps to replace the Instahots as the main heater. And the Instahots just are acting as a backup to the heat pumps. Being that I only ran a 100 amp panel, I could only really put in a 11 kilowatt electric Instahot. I didn't want to overload the panel, and I wanted to leave a little bit of room so you could have lights and something else running with the Instahot running. So normally you would do heat load calculations and determine the BTUs required to heat your space, but in my case I just put in the biggest I could manage and it'll just have to do. In the future, we're only planning on low-level heating this pole barn, so this should be more than sufficient.